Hello and welcome back, I'm ShyWizard. When I look at how to make a animal trailer, or edit an animal trailer, a giant's animal trailer if you like, for the advanced animals or any particular animals that you're going to add into a map that you can purchase from the dealer market, transport to your pasture or whatever you're going to create, and then obviously put into there and then take from there and to sell back to the market or wherever. So a couple of things we need to do here. This is going to involve a little bit of Blender as well, because I need to actually make my animal shape, the mesh of the animal, so that I can apply that to the trailer to get the position of the animals in the trailer, and then obviously set that up in the XML for the animal trailer so that they spawn in certain areas within the trailer itself. Hopefully that makes sense as we go through this. So I've got the Lost Land map here again, same as what I did in my previous video on how to work with goats. So we're going to actually go into here, take our character of goat. Now these are animated goats, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these, doesn't really matter which one. I'm just going to stick with this standard one up here. These are goat young. I'm not sure if they're rescaled or whatever else possibly are, not sure, but I want to have this one because I believe the way that the goat husbandry is set up, when I looked at all the field types and whatever else, or animal types, you put goat in and you took goat out. There was no goat in and young goat out, so I would say it just works with the actual, same one for ins and outs. But whatever. So we're just going to work with this one up here, and then I'm going to basically work with Blender to basically try and create my mesh that I can apply to the trailer, so I can get all the transform groups in the right places and everything else, and then take those readings, create my parts in there so that they're not always visible until I purchase them, and then they'll be added into the trailer through a link, a path file name in the XML to then produce what I want. Like I say, hopefully everything will become clear as we go through it. So yeah, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to open up this Goat i3D in Giants Editor here first of all, and as you can see we have our goat, and this is all animated. You can also, if you wanted to, have a bit of a play around just to see what the animations are and everything else. You can bring up your animations window within Giants Editor here, just go window and then animation, and if you click on parts of the actual goat mesh and whatever else and bits and pieces within here, it will then give you your different tracks that you can play that are set up for animations. So we have goat walk, and then idle, 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 and so on and so on. You can choose any one of these and then just literally press play, and it will then give you a demonstration of what that animation is going to be. You can't do any changes here, but at least you can actually double check to see what it's actually going to do. If that interests you, you can then go through all the different ones here to see what they all do, and just get an idea of all the animations. So it's a good way of, if you're looking to do animations within Blender, which unfortunately I haven't managed to work out just yet. I'm still trying to do that. But once you've got it exported from Blender or whatever program you're going to use, it's nice to be able to come into Giants Editor and just see what they're going to do and make sure they are working the way you intended them to work. Because sometimes when you take stuff from one program, it looks like it's working brilliantly in that program. You bring it into a completely different program, especially a game program, and then it won't do what you think it's going to do, and it will freak out and things will clip into other things and it just won't look right. So it's quite nice that they've included this in Giants Editor so that we can actually look at our animations and have a play around with them and see what they do and all the rest of it. But for this particular setup, what I need to do is just basically take my mesh, which is the part that I'm going to be working with, and what I want to do first of all is just double check that this has actually got all of the textures applied to it. So what I can do here is go into my window, material editing, and if I bring up that particular window, you can see in here we do actually have all of our textures applied to that mesh, and it's important that you export the right part so that it's going to have the UV map applied to it and everything else, because then it will make it a little easier if that's already set up for you. If you haven't got that set up, then you'll need to create a mesh and then in Blender or whatever 3D application, and that can be a little bit more well, way beyond my skill. Let's just say that. So I always try to export the right part. That's the bit that really can catch you out sometimes when you're trying to do this sort of stuff. Make sure you choose the right part to export, and then make sure it's got all your textures and everything applied to it. And that should give you a good indication that it's going to give you what you need. There will obviously be certain shaders in this particular case involved, but that stuff we can add back in if we want to later on. I'm not going to be too fussed about the actual shaders because this is literally just going to be a static animal that's going to be applied to the trailer, so applying dirt to it and everything else is not going to be really relevant in this particular case. But obviously I want it to look like it's meant to look like, so the actual diffuse, specular and normal textures and things like that we will certainly need. So what I'll do then is I'm just going to highlight my goat mesh here. I'll take a copy of the actual name of it just to make things a little easier. So we'll take that. I'm going to go File. I'm just going to go File, Export Selection with Files. I've played around with a little bit of this sort of stuff in the past to try and work out which one to actually choose is best when you're exporting something that you're going to put into Blender, whether it should be export selection with files. I wouldn't do export all with files because you don't need all the animated parts, you just need the mesh. But you can experiment with these a little bit and see which one works for you. I tend to just go export selection with files, just a force of habit. When I'm doing anything within Giant Circuit, I tend to export stuff with all of the files and everything else, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary because we're going to change this into a WAV form, if you like, an object.object form. I think they call it a wave form or WAV. I'm not really sure on that side of things either, but I'm still learning all this stuff myself. But for the most part, I can get it to do what I need it to do. I don't just the parts I don't understand are the terminology side of things. But hopefully I will get there at some point. But we'll have a look at that in a minute anyway. So like I said, I'm just going to go export selection with files. I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop here, and we'll just paste in the goat mesh. That's fine, and we'll open that folder up, paste that into there, and then we need to click in the save as type, and I'm going to choose, oh, it's a wavefront. There you go, wavefront object, or I don't know how you say it, obj. I assume that means object. Correct me in the comments on what that actually is if you know, because I'd like to know myself really, like I said, I'm still learning all this sort of stuff myself as I go along. But it's a wavefront, whatever that is. So we'll just choose that, and we'll go save, and yes, that's fine. So I don't need that anymore, I can close that down, and that as well. And we now have our goat mesh wavefront.object.obj, whatever the hell that is. So what I'm going to do then is, just to keep everything separated from the original folder structure and whatever else, I'm just going to go into here and I'm going to take the actual texture files from here and bring over to this folder. So I'm not going to mess anything up in this original, the original setup, because I don't want to cause these, make any edits to these and then have to, download the map again or whatever else. So it's always nice to separate stuff that you're going to be editing from the main, the original. So if you make any mistakes, you can just easily go back to this and start all over again and try it again, sort of thing. So I need the diffuse and the specular. I'm pretty sure there was a normal, but I don't see it at the moment, I must admit. Well, we'll take those anyway. Copy those. I could have sworn it showed a normal. I'll just double check that again, because I'm pretty sure there was a normal. Oh, there it is. Is that it? No, that's not it. Sure, that's not it. Might be. Let's just double check, because I'm not sure. It should be goat diffuse, goat specular, and goat normal, I would have thought. Let's just have a quick look, shall we? Just to be sure we're actually getting all the right parts. Normal texture. Ah, it's in shared, so it's just a default normal DDS. That's fine, that's okay. It's not relevant, so that's okay, we can get rid of that. The default, I think, is because it's got a dirt texture applied to it, because as it walks around, because don't forget this is an animated object, so as it walks around, the default normal has got something to do with the shader that then shows the dirt against the actual animal and that sort of stuff. So chances are I probably won't need that one, at least not for what I'm going to use it for. Like I said, it's just going to be a static object in a trailer. So that's going to hopefully work for me. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Blender, and I've changed some parts on here. It doesn't automatically give me a cube, and I've changed some of my key bindings and stuff like that because I find it easier to work with certain mouse buttons over others and all sorts of other bits and pieces. But for the most part, it's pretty default. I haven't changed too much. So I'm going to go File, and I'm going to go Import, and we'll choose wavefront.obj. Going to go back to my desktop. We'll go into the goat mesh, double click on the goat mesh.obj, and that will then bring it into Blender. Fantastic. Okay, so we've now got our goat mesh, the actual solid object within Blender itself, but obviously I need to apply a texture to that so it's going to look like a goat, if you like. Sorry, having the mesh there and everything, but I want it to actually look and represent what a goat with all of its colours and all the rest of it. So again, this is all sort of stuff I'm learning, so if I'm doing something wrong here, then please let me know in the comments. There may be easier ways of doing this. This is just the way that I do it, and it sort of works. Sorry about the phone again, every time. Hit record and the damn phone goes bent off, never mind. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my window over here, and I've got my texture. That's the material one. I always get these muddled up. So we need to apply a material to it first before we go any further. So I'm going to apply my material, and all I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to call this Goat 1, and then hit enter. And then I'll create a texture. So I create a texture, and because I'm using an image, I need to make sure that my type is set to image or movie, and then I'm going to come down to here and use the open to then locate that image. So I'm going to go desktop, go back up to goat mesh, and because I brought these over, I can choose. I'm just going to work with the diffuse, and I'll apply the specular one if I feel I need it later on in Giants Editor, which I'll show you how to do that when we get to it. So I'm going to select my goat_diffuse DDS, and we'll go open. Now you can see straight away in here that there's many different colors of goat. You've got white ones, brown ones, black ones, all sorts. So this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, for me at least. Obviously people that are really good with Blender, this is going to be straightforward and simple, but for me and possibly others, it's not going to be quite so simple. And if I actually now go down to here and change this over to texture mode, what I will do is I'll put a different lamp in here just so you can see it a bit better. If I now look at this, it's all multicolored because it's applied all of the colors to this mesh, not just one of them. I want this to be just a single color, whether it be brown, white or black, so I need to have a bit of a play around with the actual UV mesh to try and get that to only show one of the colors in the image. So this is a bit of a sort of trial and error situation for me. I just play around with it until I get it looking how I want it to look. So I'm going to go into this little tabby box up the top here, and I'm going to go down to UV editing. And if I click on my goat here and then hit tab, I bring up my UV mesh, which I can zoom in and out of with the mouse wheel and all the rest of it. So I'm going to go down to here. I'm going to apply the same image over here in the UV mesh to the actual goat mesh over here. So I'm going to go open, go to my desktop, go into goat mesh, and then double click on the goat diffuse. And as you can see, it brings it in with everything, all of the different goat colors and everything else. So what I'll try and do here is move this over a little bit so I can actually see this a bit clearer. So what you're going to need to do here is rescale this UV mesh against one of these colors. Choose which one you want and then just rescale it to that. So, and then move it around. So I'm going to hit the A key. So I'm going to hit the... It does that sometimes. I don't know why. It actually deselects my Blender window. I don't know why. So anyway, with the window now reselected, I'm going to hit the A key, and that will select all of the mesh in this window, my UV editing window. So I'm going to hit S to rescale it, and I can then drag with my mouse to rescale it to a certain size, and I'll left click to then accept the change. Now if you scale it and then think, oh, I didn't want it to be that, you can always hit your right mouse button and it will then cancel that scaling move or whatever you're doing. So if I get it to like there and think, oh, that's not right or whatever else, or made a mistake in my scaling, before I hit the left mouse button, because once you hit the left mouse button it locks in that change, but if I hit the right mouse button it will put it back to what it was before I scaled it or grabbed it or moved it or whatever else. And talking about moving and grabbing, we now need to press the G key, which will allow me to move the entire mesh around where I want it to be. So I'm going to move it up to, we'll do this top left one I think in this particular case, and I'll hit the left mouse button to move it to there, and I'll rescale it again. And like I say, this, you'll need to do this many times to get it into the right position, and it can be a little bit tricky, and I've not yet managed to figure out how I can zoom in on just a certain portion of this window. I can zoom in and out on the window, but I can't zoom in just on this portion of the window. I'm not quite sure how to do that. I've tried dragging and all sorts of different things. There's no moving sort of slider bars or anything, so again, if anybody knows how to do that, let me know in the comments, because that would be greatly appreciated. I've watched many videos and some of them have just confused the hell out of me, I'll be absolutely honest with you guys. So I'm just learning as I go myself, and just trying to teach myself stuff here a lot, really. Making mistakes and then trying to rectify stuff. Okay, so I'm going to rescale it again, so I'm going to hit S and then move out a little bit, and then click left and we'll G and move it a bit more. And like I say, it's just going to be a case of moving it around into whatever position and then rescaling it again and stuff like that till you get it exactly where you want it to be. So we'll do that and we'll scale again. Oops. And G, and we'll sort of move it a bit more again. It's not quite lining up exactly where I want it to be, if I'm honest, but hopefully I can get it somewhere close. That'll be nice. And G. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So we'll put it there like that, and then I'm going to go back to default so I can actually see it in its entirety up over here. I'll hit tab to deselect the go back to object mode, and then I can rotate around and do whatever I need to do, zoom in and stuff. And I don't think that looks too bad actually. The eyes are in the right place. All the fur looks good. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad at all actually. So I'm still getting used to my new key binding, so yeah, that looks pretty good, I think, actually. I can definitely work with that. I think if I was to put that in a trailer, I would definitely recognise that as a goat. So I'm going to go with that. And like I say, it can be a little bit of playing around. Now, obviously, if you want to have multiple colours of goats in your trailer, that's going to be a little bit more complicated, and I'm not 100% sure on how to do that. It has something to do with the skinning option within objects, how you can actually have the same mask, but it uses this sort of a skinning mode where it randomly chooses different colors in the diffuse texture and applies it to the mesh. And again, that's something I don't really know how to do that. So unfortunately for this sort of setup, they will all be the one color, but you know, whatever. I'm going to go with that. I'm good with that. I'm not too fussed really. There may be other ways of doing it. Maybe multiple path file names to different coloured goats. I'm going to experiment with that a little bit and see how I end up with that. But I think that might just confuse things a little bit more. So for now, I'm just going to stick with the one coloured goat. I'm just going to go with that, and just, you know, that'll be fine for me. I'm not too fussed about it. Okay, so now we've actually got all of our textures applied to there. What I will do is actually delete my lamp because I no longer require that. So we'll press X and then delete. And then all I'm going to do now is just export this out. so that I can bring it into Giant's Editor and then make a few changes in Giant's Editor. So with it selected, I'm just going to go File, Export, and I'm going to go Giant's i3D. Now obviously, you need to apply the Giant's i3D exporter to your Blender. If you go onto the GDN, the Giants Developer Network, there is a an exe program, an executable program that you can run, and it will automatically then install the Giant's i3D exporter into your Blender version, whatever that version may be. I forget what version this is. Don't know if I can actually show you. Maybe 2.79. I don't know if that's the latest version or not. I haven't checked. But I would recommend you download the latest version anyway. But everything I've shown you here should be exactly the same, because I'm not really showing you that much in any great depth or anything like that. And like I said, I don't know how to do animations as yet, so I'm still trying to learn how to do that, so I can actually try and do some different things with animations. But I'm struggling to get my head around all that sort of stuff at the moment, and I've been really busy with work. And having a cold doesn't really help, because my brain is hurting all the time. So, but never mind. So I'm going to, like I say, I'm going to File, Export, and then we'll just export this as a i3D. So we'll do that. I'm going to put it in the same folder as I've got before. So we'll go into here, and we'll just again call this Goat 1. Actually, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to keep it all lowercase. And we'll go Enter, so it puts my i3D on the end there, and we'll just go Export i3D. Okay, fantastic. So I can minimize that down, and you can see now I've got my Goat 1 i3D. So I need to open this up in Blender, but first of all, before I do that, I need to change the path file name in it for the actual Diffuse, the Goat_Diffuse DDS, because the way Blender will export the links, the path file name, it will actually link it as C:// etc, user, desktop, whatever else. So if I actually open this in Notepad++, you'll see what I mean. So C:// users my desktop, blah blah blah. You don't need all that in there. All you need to do is just remove all that sort of stuff, delete it. So it's now pointing in that, because I've copied the actual textures over to this folder specifically, it's all in the same folder, so now that is pointing to the right place for that texture for the Giant's Editor to find it. And I can go ahead and save that, and we'll close that down. And then I'm going to open this up in Giant's Editor itself. It will give me an error, because at the moment it hasn't been set up 100% correctly, because if we look in our console down the bottom, and if you haven't got this open, Window and then Console, it will show me that I've got an i3D which contains non-binary index triangle sets. So that's not really of any use to me. So if we actually, I can have a bit of a look at my goat in here in the actual Giant's Editor here, just to see what it looks like and all the rest of it, just to make sure that it's displaying correctly, and I think it looks pretty good actually. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm really pleased with how that's come out actually, for just a very quick sort of mess about in Blender. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to delete my lamp because I don't need that. We'll leave the camera. I think we'll leave that for now at least. Might delete the camera as well later on, because I probably won't need that, but we'll leave it there for now. That's okay. Now, before I mess about with any of the other textures, I'm going to get rid of this error, because I don't want that to be there. So to do that, I need to go File and then Save As. Click on my goat1.i3D, and then in my Save As type, I need to change it from i3D to binary i3D, and then click Save, and it'll ask me if I want to replace it, which I do, so I go yes. I can close this down. Don't save it again though. If it asks you to, click No, because if you save it again, it will overwrite what you've just done and put it back to what it was before. So we don't want that, because we need this i3D shapes file as well. So I'm going to double click that again and reopen it in Giant's Editor, and I should now have no errors. Fantastic, and everything looks pretty good still. Excellent, we've got what we need there. So next thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to apply my specular texture to the goat. It may be that that's not required for what I'm going to do with it, because it's literally just going to be a static object in a trailer, but it gives us that texture. so may as well use it. Again, that's going to be on you guys to experiment a little bit. Put it on there, don't put it on there, see what it looks like. If it looks really good, then leave it be. If it doesn't, and you get maybe without the specular texture under certain lighting conditions, it might give you some freaky texture issues and stuff like that, so you might need to apply it, and vice versa. So it's again just put it on, don't put it on, apply it, don't apply it, whatever, just see how you get on. But I'm going to put it in anyway for this. So again, I'm going to go window and then material editing, and I want to move that, I think, because it's going to be right in my way over there. So I'm going to click on my goat mesh, and you can see we've got our goat 1 for our material, and I've got my diffuse, but I want to apply my specular, so I'm going to click on the little dot thing there, and again up here as well, and I'm going to go to my appropriate folder, goat mesh, and we've got our goat specular DDS, so I'll highlight that, click open, click close. I've now applied my specular texture to that as well. So we've now got both the diffuse and the specular applied. I've applied one within Blender, but the other one I've applied here within Giants Editor. I find that is the easiest way to do it for me. Trying to mess about with normal textures and specular textures within Blender is something I've struggled with a little bit, so I decided not to bother. I just work with the diffuse channel or the diffuse texture, and then apply the others and any shaders within Giants Editor, and that tends to always, so far, work for me. I'm sure that there will be instances that it won't, but for what I've done so far with any of these particular static objects at least, it's worked perfectly fine, and that's good enough for me. So back in Giants Editor again, and I'm going to just basically work with the Joskins Betamax RDS7500, I believe it's called, the small animal trailer, and I'm going to create a modded version of this. So I'm going to use the Giants one, but I'm going to make my own modded version, and with the 7.1.0 version of Giants Editor, if you guys didn't already know, we have this new mod from game which allows us to use Giants Editor to basically create our own mods from nearly all of the Giants standard vanilla equipment. So with this we can go new mod from game, and we can then choose what we want in here. You can also make your own modded versions of maps. The Goldcrest Valley is mod map 1 and Sosnovka is mod map 2. So that's a nice way of making certain different base maps to work with that have got all of the Giants functionality, but also we can now create our own kind of modded vehicles and whatever else from this setup. So we'll try and find what I'm looking for in here, and it takes me a while to actually pick it out because I generally go past it 3 or 4 times before I actually see it. So we'll just try and find it. If it takes me more than one attempt to get it, I'll pause the video and then come back when I've selected it. But hopefully I can pick it out the first time round. It's just sometimes they don't always call it the same. It's kind of abbreviated sometimes, so you can look for Betamax and it's not in there, and then you look for RDS and that's not in there, and it's called something you wouldn't expect it to be called sometimes. Sometimes it's just a case of you scroll straight past it a few times like I normally do, and it's staring you right in the face. There we go. They've actually used the full name on this one. Betamax RDS7500. So we'll click that, go OK. We'll use the default folder, that's fine. And then we'll go OK, and it will then basically make a modded version of the Betamax animal trailer for us. Fantastic. So we've got all of our parts in here. So I'm just going to go save, which will update all the bits and pieces and whatever else, and then I can go close. No, I don't need to save it again. So we'll go into my documents folder here, FS17 mods, I'm going to drag that on my desktop so it's easier to work with. If I reopen this again now, we've got some parts we need to obviously adapt in here. The mod desk will need to be changed a little bit. So I can put my name in here if I want to. And we've got a version number and some other bits and pieces. The icon PNG I'll need to change. The store, that's fine, that'll be okay. So I'll create a couple lines there. I need to basically take what we got here so far. Let's have a look. So what I'll do is I'll take that one from there and I'll just use the same one. So we'll come into here and paste that into there. So that will be my icon as well as my store. That's okay. Not really too fussed about that. We'll save that. And then I can go into, let's go into my, well, let's open it up in Giant Editor, I guess, and have a look where the actual position of it all will be. So if we go through here, you have your Joskins Viz, and within here you have your animals transform group, which has got at the moment obviously sheep, pig and cow. We need to add a new one into there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create transform group. I'll select it, Ctrl X to cut it, click on my animals transform group, Ctrl V, and then in here I'm going to change this to goat, tab, lock in that change. And then within here I need to obviously put in my transform groups and the area where the individual animal is going to spawn within the trailer itself. So if we take cow for example, you can see it as I go through each of the transform groups here for cow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, you can see that they are differently positioned, differently rotated, and that's the area that those cows will spawn in the trailer as you purchase them. And that's kind of random, so in my experience, so as if you were to say, for example, buy one cow, it wouldn't necessarily pick cow 1, it might pick cow 4. It's a little bit random on the way it positions what animal you actually purchase. It's not, you know, it doesn't go sort of alphanumeric or anything like that in the selection. It just picks one of these randomly and then puts it wherever the transform group is located within the actual trailer. But that's okay, we can work with that. So what I need to do then is actually bring my goat model, my 3D goat model that I've now created in Blender, and put that into the trailer and make several duplications of it, apply it to my goat transform group, so that I can then gauge where all of the new transform groups are going to need to be. Because if I just start slapping transform groups in here willy-nilly, they might be too low, too high, too close together, so you'll have animals clipping into each other. They might be clipping out the side of the trailer and all sorts of stuff, so because you've got no actual visual representation to work with at the moment, which is why I created my first and foremost, which is why I created the actual goat mesh, if you like, the object, so that I can import it into the trailer and select the areas that I'm going to be applying it to, but obviously secondly it's going to be required to then link that path file name in the XML to spawn that model into the trailer itself. Hopefully all that makes sense. So what I need to do then is obviously bring this into my trailer here. So you can do this in however way you want to do it. You can maybe create a folder called character. That seems to be the norm thing to do with these. If I can remember how to spell character. Character. I don't know how you spell character. What a numpty. Actually, it's probably, I was going to use that, but it's probably in one of these, I expect. There you go. We'll just take that. That's probably right, actually. I've probably spelled it right, but just to be sure. When you got a cold, nothing seems to work properly. Can't spell, can't speak properly, can't do anything properly. Okay, so now that I've got that into there, I can potentially I'll do many different things here, I guess, but what I'll do, I think, is I'm just going to copy all of that, and we'll copy it over into here like so, just so I've got my backup here, so if anything goes wrong, I'm not going to have to go through the whole blender process again and all the rest of it. Okay, so now that I've got that into there, I can then go back into my trailer, and we'll go File, Import, go into my Joskins trailer here, and Character, Goat1, and we'll import it in. Now obviously, like I said before, I may need to remove the camera, which in this case I do, so I'm going to delete that. And then we will position our goat where we need to be, but I would recommend to put it into the transform group that you're going to be applying all the parts to first of all, because you may find that they're not all zeroed. They probably are. That one is. Sometimes they're not always zeroed, so if you don't apply it to a specific transform group that you're going to be working with, you can place it within all the areas you want, and then when you actually go to run it in game, they're sort of spawned outside the trailer over here somewhere, or under the ground, or up in the air, because the transform group that you're actually working with hasn't got the same attributes as all the others, because you can see this has actually got a 90-degree rotation X on it, so it can sort of mess things up a little bit if you're not too careful. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to go Ctrl X, and I'll actually put it into the transform group here like so. And then what I can do is actually manipulate this around within the trailer itself, and this is where it can be a bit tricky because you're working in a bit of a tight sort of area. What I probably would do also is to re-zero everything from the get-go. So if I actually put that back to 0, because we've got a rotation X on here of 90, I want to have all of this zeroed correctly so that my XYZ is in the right place, because if you can look at that at the moment, the blue is going downwards, whereas if you click on all the others, the blue is actually going forwards and the green is going upwards. So I want to have them match in, if you like. So I'm going to highlight it in the Cinah here. I'm going to go Edit, and I'm going to go Freeze Transform, and I'm going to go Translate and Scale and Rotate. Actually, I won't do Scale because I don't need to do Scale because it's all 1, 1 and 1. So I'll just do Translate and Rotate, and if I then click Apply, that will then rotate all of the parts and re-zero it. It will put everything back to 0 the way I need it to be, so all of them are correct, so I can work with them. Because now if I look at this one, green up, blue forward, and red is going left, if you want to look at it in this particular sense, that's the same as all the others, so it matches in. So you're not going to have certain conflicts because your XYZ is the wrong way round. Blender has got a different axis set up to Giant's Editor. The X, Y and Z is not, it doesn't match the same for some reason. So when you actually export something from Blender, you sometimes have to do what I've just done there, and reset it all before you start moving it around and manipulating it against the object that you want to apply it to, just so everything matches with whatever else you've got on the map. Just makes things a little easier and prevents some conflicts in certain things in certain areas. Okay, so I'm just going to move this up to a certain height like so. I'm not going to get too technical here with, you know, them pointing different directions and off to angles and stuff like that. Sorry about all the zooming and stuff. I even bought a new mouse mat and it still doesn't really help much. I think my mouse might be out of whack or something, but you know, it is what it is. So I think what I'll do is let's lower my nav speed down. That may help a little bit. I'm not saying it will, but it might. So what I can do there then is, if I, like I said, keep it nice and simple. So I'm just going to make a duplication with Ctrl D, and I'll move this one over like so, and then I'll go Ctrl D again, move this one back, Ctrl D, move this one over, Ctrl D, and we'll move this one back, Ctrl D, move that one over. Just like I say, keep it nice and simple to start with. You can start to make them, you know, put them on different angles and all sorts of stuff as you see fit, as you play around with it and whatever else. But I'm just going to keep things relatively simple here for the video. So again, we'll go Ctrl D, and I'll move this one back to here, and then move him over a little bit, assuming it's a he. Ctrl D, and we'll move this one over like so. That'll be fine. You could potentially fit more than that in here, but the idea is, you know, to show you how to set this up. You can then experiment with however many you want to put in here, and whatever else. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nice round number. Perfect. Okay, so we're not done with it just yet though, because obviously I don't want to have these in the trailer until they're purchased or collected from the goat pasture or whatever else. I want them to only show up when I actually have physical goats in the trailer, you know, when I've got them from the market or I've picked them up from the pasture or whatever else. So what I need to do is actually take these attributes here and apply those to transform groups like we've got with the cow, pig and sheep, because these are actually cubes, solid objects, and it shows that there they are rigid objects. And that's another thing I would probably recommend, that for the trailer itself, they don't need to be rigid objects. So before you actually set it all up, later on I'll show you, you need to deactivate the rigid object stuff, because they don't need to be rigid objects, not for the trailer setup anyway. And it could cause issues if they are solid objects or rigid objects. It might cause errors, so we'll remove that later on anyway. Not relevant here, but it will be later on. Okay, so we've got 8 goats, so what I need to do is create 8 transform groups. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll highlight all of those, Ctrl X, click on my goat transform group, Ctrl V and paste it in. Now what I need to do is go through all of these and take the attributes XYZ, and this is why I kept it as simple as possible, so I've only got the translate XYZ to work with. If you're putting them on different angles, then you'll obviously need to work with the rotate XYZ as well. But what I can do here really simply is, with each one in turn selected, I can highlight the translate X, left control, left shift and C will copy all of the translate attributes in one go, and I can click on my first transform group here, left shift, left control and V, and it will paste them all in one go, so I don't have to copy them over individually. And then I can do that for all of them, so I can just really quickly go down these, so like so, and I'll do this one. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whoops. 6. Press the wrong button. Easy to do. 7. And lastly 8. Copy and paste. Okay, so if you now go through these, so just to make sure that they're not going to be in the same place, because sometimes, you know, when you're doing something quick or, you know, rushing or whatever else, you can paste the numbers into 2 different transform groups, and you'll have 2 transform groups in the same place. So when you buy your whatever animal you're working with, you'll end up having 2 spawn in exactly the same place. You don't want that, so just go through them, make sure all the transform groups move to different places. That's perfectly fine, we're good with that. So now I can delete my goats, because I don't need them anymore. They were literally just for visual representation, to give me the area to work with, and where to give me a sort of visuals to look at, so I could take the values to apply to my transform groups. And if you want to, then you can obviously go through here and change all of these. So you can go in and change this to goat 1, goat 2, and so on and so on. So I'll quickly do that. I'll pause, I'll quickly do that, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so I've now changed all of those so they are appropriately numbered and whatever else, goat 1 to 8 in the goat transform group and whatever else. Excellent. So now what we need to do though is point the XML to this particular setup so that it knows what it's going to basically work with. So keeping the Giants editor session open, we can actually go ahead and save this. I'm going to go back into the folder here, and then we'll go into the actual XML here. And if we look through this, you've got our fill units, pig, sheep, cow, and I need to obviously add in my goat. So whatever animal you're going to be working with, you need to add in there. And then we also need to do the same down here. So I'm just going to make a copy of that line, and we'll make a new space there, paste that in, and then I need to obviously put in goat there like so. Make sure obviously that this is spelt exactly the same way as your animal type registered in your mod desk, and for the actual setup that you've got for your animal pasture and all the rest of it, because if you spell it wrong it will cause conflicts and all sorts of bits and pieces. So now what we need to do is obviously link that index to our new animals. So you're linking it to the main transform group, not the individual ones. So we've got this index path up here, and you can check that by looking at cow, for example. So it'll be 2, 2, and 2. So if we look in here and go to cow, you've got 0, 2, 2, 2. So that's how we know what we're going to be trying to do with the goat one. So we're going to literally copy that index path directly from the Giants editor session here with Ctrl C. We'll come into here, we'll highlight our index path there and paste it in. So now we've got that set up. Fantastic. So the next thing I need to do then is obviously tell it where that character, that object is going to be, because the pig, sheep, cow is standard. We can work with that a slightly different way, because it will point to the Giants setup, not our own setup, because we don't want to have all these different textures in our trailer, because it will just, you know, add stuff in there that's already in the game or as it is, sort of thing. So but we will need to link them, because this is a modded trailer. It's going to go in the mods folder itself. It's not part of the Giants structure, if you like. You still need to actually put in a path file name. So I'm going to get that, and then I'll come back and we'll put that in, because I need to look that up, and then I'll apply that one, and then we'll work with the goat one, which will obviously be slightly different because we've got that in our trailer folder structure. Right, so I've applied the appropriate file name for the standard vanilla animal setup. So I have a file name $data S2 character sheep, and then character pig, character cow. This is going to point to the Giants setup for those particular animals, because they're vanilla animals. That's kind of the way we do it. And obviously, if you had these, you know, the i3Ds for these animals, you could theoretically apply them to your trailer and then point the path file name to those folders. But we're just going to work with the Giants ones because I don't see any reason not to. So what we need to do now then is delete that, and then we need to basically apply our new one for the goat. So we're in character folder obviously, and we've got character, and then it's just literally in that folder. So you could, I guess, if you wanted to here, just to keep everything structured in a similar fashion, let's change that to goat, and then we'll highlight all this stuff, Ctrl X, and we'll paste it into there. So we've actually got a similar kind of folder structure to what the Giants setup has. So what we need to do obviously then is change that to goat, and then our goat1.i3d. So we can change that to goat, and then this one would be goat1i3d. That needs to go away though because it's not in the $data folder. So it's just character goat1i3d because that's the folder that's in. So character goat and then goat1i3d. So that should be pretty good there, hopefully. It says that should find that okay. We'll test that when we get into game, but it should find it. That should be fine. So we've now saved all of that, so we're going to do that, and that's all set up. So we've linked our index into our newly created animals transform group with all the correctly placed transform groups and whatever else within the trailer itself. That's fantastic. We'll just save that again just to be sure. Close that down. We don't need this anymore, so we're going to close that down as well. One last thing I want to do before I go any further here is I just want to put a title into here, so I'll make a few more lines, and I'm just going to go, I have to remember how to do this. I think it's title, come on, spell title, and then we'll just I suppose I could do it there, so we'll just call it advanced animal trailer. And then we'll do that. Like I said, I have to remember how to do this. Doing it off the top of my head. And it doesn't help that I can't spell for some reason today. And title, I think that has to be like that. I think that's right. I can't remember. It's probably wrong. I think that's right though. Yeah, we'll go with that. That'll be alright. I'm sure that's right. And then we'll do description. So animal trailer for standard and advanced animals. No, not a question mark, you moron. There we go. It's bad when the brain stops working. Okay, we'll go with that. Hopefully, I've done that right. Pretty sure I have. Anyway, so something like that. Anyway, we'll do that. So we've got a title, we've got our version number. You put whatever you want in there. I'm using the store icon or the store PNG just to make it simple for my name and everything else. And obviously the root is a vehicle, root node is a vehicle, and we've got our XML and all the rest of it, and whatever else. So we'll close that down. It's probably going to throw up a million errors. And what I will do is I'm going to rename the folder here. So we'll rename this. I always like to put FS17 underscore before everything, just so you know what it's all about. The rest you can leave as it is, that's fine. And then we'll zip all this up. So if we add that to that like so, and then what I'll do is I'll put that in my mods folder for Farming Simulator 17. This is the same map that I put the goats on in the last setup, so we'll just move that over to there like so. And if all is well, I should now be able to purchase that in-game and then collect my goats from the actual market, the animal market on the map, and then take them to the actual goat pasture and drop them off there. So we'll get into game and we'll test that and see what happens, I guess. So I've come over to the store here. I've bought another tractor, but I wanted to buy the trailer with you guys here as well, just so you can see if I've completely fluffed it up. I'm going to show all the errors and everything else as well. So we'll go into the store here. I will actually just bring up my console and you can see that there are no errors in here at the moment. The only error that I have actually got, which is more of a warning, is showing me that I haven't got my map zipped up, because, you know, I don't zip up my maps when I'm editing them and stuff like that. It's too much of a pain to zip them up, unzip them and zip them up and all the rest of it, just to make small tweaks and things like that. But, you know, if you're not playing in multiplayer, there's no real need to zip up a map anyway. So we'll come over, go into the animals section here, and you can see we've got our standard one here, the Betamax blah de blah, and there's my modded one there. It doesn't show any additional HUDs because I haven't got those applied to the actual trailer. That's something that is kind of a little bit hit and miss in my opinion. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't show up. It's really weird. It's possible because I haven't set something up in the mod desk to display it. I'm not entirely sure, but I've found that even though it doesn't show it here, it still works. Or in the past it has anyway, when I've worked with other animals that I've added to the trailers. Hopefully it will work in this particular case as well. But first of all, obviously we need to see if we can buy the damn thing. So let's double click on it. Obviously this has got no upgrades and whatever else, so I'll go buy 24,000 and it's allowed us to buy it. So far I've done something right. The only thing I will say, in the mod desk I actually typed title and description with uppercase D and uppercase T. I'm pretty sure that that's not right. It doesn't seem to have made any difference, to be honest with you, but it should really be lowercase. It's very rare that you have uppercase letters in the actual tags, if ever. I don't remember ever seeing any, but doesn't, like I said, it doesn't seem to have made much difference, so I'm not, you know, not going to worry about it too much. So we'll just make sure before we go any further that our goats are still here, present on the map. We've got goats, the 100 that I bought last time, and you can see, like, if you watch my video on how to get goats into the map and the rest of it, you can see that I haven't added any more food or whatever else to them as yet. So they're all pretty much the same as they were before, and it's just kicked over to tell me all the bits and pieces. So yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so okay, so we've come over to the livestock market, and I keep calling it animal market, I guess it is really, but livestock market. We'll open up the doodah so you can see the animals hopefully spawn into the right places. We'll press our R key, and we have our goat in the store. This is something I couldn't show you in the last video until I had actually created the trailer. So we'll highlight this, and obviously it only carries 8. So we'll go up to 8 and we'll click, well actually what I'll do is I'm going to do 1 and we'll click confirm. I want to buy 1 goat, and you can see straight away something's not worked because it hasn't displayed the goat in the trailer. So let's have a look. What have we got script wise, error wise? So entity camera has unblurred set shader parameter. There's a few errors there that we need to look through and have a bit of a play with, because something hasn't quite come over correctly. There's not too many though, just a couple that I need to have a play around with. For some reason they haven't quite, something to do with entity camera has invalid type Not really sure what that is, but I will look into that and see what's going on. I wanted to include errors as well, so you guys can see I learn as I go along. I bring it into the game. Everything looks good in the editor and whatever else, but sometimes when you bring stuff into the game and then try and apply it, it doesn't work the way you think it's going to work. In this particular case, that's exactly what's happened. So I'll exit out, we'll go back into the editor, we'll have a look and see what I haven't done, and why it's giving me certain errors and stuff like that, because it should have spawned them in okay, but obviously something there isn't quite right to get it working 100%. So we'll take a look at that and then we'll come back in a little bit. Okay, so I had a bit of a play around. I just want to show you this. If we actually look at the goats, they are now spawning in, and I've remembered what I'd done wrong. A couple of different things which I'll talk about in a minute, but you can see because I applied the specular colour to them, they've got this nasty green sort of tinge to them. So we're going to come out of the game now and go back onto the desktop, and we'll have a bit of a look at what I've done there and explain the bits and pieces. Now, when it comes to textures, I've had different results with different in different ways I've done it. I've applied specular and normal textures and it's worked fine, then in other cases I've applied them and it hasn't worked fine, and it's given me something similar to this sort of setup, or the textures will flicker or they'll turn black and all sorts of different things. Now I know that with certain moving planes, moving heaps and things like that, specular textures do tend to cause problems in FS17. I've come across this many times, so there may be some issues with specular textures again in this particular case, because there's no shaders applied to things, because these are just static objects. There may be something there that's causing a conflict, but I just wanted to show you that because I wanted to give you, leave nothing out really, show you all of the errors and mistakes and whatever else that come along with it, and we'll talk about all the bits and pieces, but there are no errors. I've got a mod in here which is the console extension, which always gives me that warning, but other than that there's nothing in here. But I don't particularly want green green goats, so we'll have a look at that. We'll get back on the desktop, we'll have a look at that and then go from there. So back out on the desktop again, and if we actually look at our character here, the goat, a couple of things. I open this up in Giant Editor and I just want to show you what I've gone through here. Two things, well maybe three or four things, I'm not really sure, we'll just count them as we go along I guess. It's important to note where in your cinegraph certain things are placed. Because I had the camera above the goat mesh, it was trying to spawn the camera, not the goat, for some strange reason. It's just the way it works I guess, and obviously then it was causing issues because it didn't have the appropriate parts applied to it and bits and pieces. So when you're working with this sort of stuff, must make sure that the camera is below your actual object that you're going to be spawning into the trailer or whatever else. That's just a quick fix. I did actually change the name of it from camera to perspective or persp, but just playing around with different things because I couldn't remember. I've done this before, but it was a while ago. I played around with trying to get horses to work, and I actually created a trailer for horses, and I did actually get them to display eventually, and this is what I had to kind of go through. So just to go over that again, you must make sure that the camera, and it must have a camera, otherwise it won't be able to view it in its own Giant Editor session. If you try and delete this one, it'll actually tell you can't because you're using it to view stuff. So there's no way to get rid of that, but you just need to make sure that the arrangement within the cinegraph is correct, and it must be below your actual object or mesh that you're working with. So just be aware of that. The other thing is I forgot to actually deactivate rigid body mode, and that may have been causing some conflicts as well. So just make sure that whatever you do, make sure it's not a rigid object within the Giant Editor session here, because it doesn't need to be in the trailer. There's no reason for it, so just make sure that's turned off as well. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into our material editing stuff here. We'll select the goat, and I'm going to delete the actual specular texture and just work with the diffuse texture, because I'm pretty sure that that's what is causing some errors there on that side of things. There may be some other stuff in here that I could have applied, perhaps maybe that other texture, the normal texture, that may have something to do with it. but I'm just going to delete it and work with the diffuse texture, because again this is just a static object in a trailer, so it's not really, as long as it looks like this, then that's good enough for me. I'm not really too bothered about anything else, because it's not going to be moving around on its own and whatever else, so I'm not going to start messing around with all these bits and pieces. I'm just going to work with as little as I've got to here and no more. So I'm going to go with that, and then we'll see what happens. So now that I've set all my camera up in the right place and whatever else, we've deleted the specular texture and whatever, so I'll zip all this back up again, and we'll get back into game, and hopefully now I should be able to get my goats looking correct, not green, and they will spawn in the trailer correctly and all the rest of it, and I won't get any errors, and I can then take them over and deliver them to my goat pasture. So we'll do that now. Okay, so got an empty trailer at the moment. We'll just again go into the actual animal market here, livestock market, whatever you want to call it. Press the R key, bring up our thing. I obviously tested it with the other animals, and it does work with the pig, sheep and the cows, so that's fine, because it's obviously important, when you're making a modded trailer, that it does work with the vanilla stuff as well. So because you don't want to have potentially one trailer just to work with the advanced animals and then have to buy another one to work with the vanilla stuff. So it's nice that they do work with all of the vanilla stuff as well, and it just means I've only got to buy the one trailer, so to speak, and I can just use all of the animals. If I was to bring in the zebu and the dog and all the rest of it, it would all work with just this one trailer, and that's good. So I'll select my goat. This time I'm just going to buy all 8, that's fine, and we'll click confirm, and there we go. We now have our 8 goats in the trailer, and they're not green anymore, so, and they look okay. Like I said, I've not messed around with angling them in certain areas, and they're pretty sort of spaced out, straightforward in a line kind of thing. You could potentially put more than 8 in here, might be able to fit 10 or 12 or whatever, but I'm just going to stick with the 8, that's fine. But I think they look pretty good. So again, they are all one colour. I don't know how to set it up at present where you would get multicoloured ones in here, and all the rest of it. There's a way of doing it, I just don't know how to do it, so I'm just going to go with that. So we'll stick the cover on, and we'll just head on over to the goat pasture. You can see that we've got our open animal dialogue. We can lower our trailer, that's part of the feature of this trailer. So we'll go R to open up our thingy. We can see we've got 100 in here, so if I now empty those out, 8 have gone from the trailer and gone into my pasture, that's fine. We'll click confirm. Yes, we want to unload 8 of the goats, or 8 animals, from the trailer. Yes. My goats have now disappeared from the trailer, fantastic. And if I come back out of here to give me a bit of space, I should now be able to go into the menu and see that I've got 108 goats. So we'll go in here, come across to our animals, we've now got 108 goats. So that side of it is working perfectly fine. We've managed to eventually set up a trailer and got all the bits and pieces in there. We have, albeit the same colour, but we've got a visual representation of an actual animal being in the trailer. I've seen a couple of times where the trailer is set up to accept certain animals, but the person who's done it has not gone down the road of actually creating the object in the trailer. So yeah, it says in the menu you've got X amount of whatever, but there's no actual visual objects. To me, that's not really the way I like to do things, so I wanted to just try and give you guys as much information as possible, and have a bit of a play around in Blender as well and all the rest of it. So, but we've got it all working, you know, finally. And like I said, I wanted to keep the errors, what mistakes I make as well, so you can see all of it, you know, behind the scenes stuff as well, and whatever else, if you want to call it that. I don't like to skip stuff if I can help it. Sometimes I have to for video length and stuff like that, or, you know, I don't like to go into game, come out of game, go into game, come out of game too many times if I can help it, because it just gets frustrating for me, and I'm sure you guys as well. But I wanted to show you certain things that, you know, haven't quite worked the way I intended them to the first time round, and what I've then needed to do to fix it. So there we go. I'm going to finish it there. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. I've been ShyWizard. I am ShyWizard. And I'll catch you on the next one.